Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. They never chose each other. Gemini, a brilliant but distant professor, agreed to an arranged marriage for convenience. Fourth, young and full of life, saw it as duty, nothing more. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. Because on the first day of class, Gemini looked up from his lectern and realized his new husband was sitting in the front row. What began as obligations soon turned into something far more dangerous. A love neither of them was prepared to face. Chapter 1. Fourth Natawat never imagined he'd get married before graduation. And certainly not to Professor Gemini Norowit, the cold, unreadable, and intimidating man everyone in the university's business faculty whispered about. Stories surrounded Gemini wherever he went, that he was the heir to Norowit Holdings, that he could end a student's career with one look, that he never showed emotion. So why was Fourth standing now in a private villa in Chiang Mai, heart racing under his white tuxedo, about to say, "I do" to him? The answer was simple: family business. Gemini's family owned the university. Fourth's father ran one of the largest import-export companies in the region. The marriage was part of a confidential agreement, a union between two powerful families, bound by contract and secrecy. No one outside their families could know. Not the students, not the staff, not even the press. Just a quiet ceremony under lantern light, surrounded by mountains and silence. Fourth fidgeted with his sleeves for the 20th time. "Two," he whispered to his older sister, who was fussing with his hair. "Do I look ridiculous? This feels like a costume party." Two grinned. "You look like a prince, Fourth. Now go marry your mysterious professor." "That's not exactly comforting." "Oh, come on. You're marrying the university's most admired academic. People would kill for that." Fourth groaned. "You do realize you're talking about someone who terrifies half the campus?" Two laughed, fixing the last strand of his hair. "You'll survive. Try to smile." Before Fourth could reply, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed softly across the marble floor. The air changed. Gemini Norowit had arrived. Fourth turned instinctively and froze. Gemini stood at the entrance, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His dark hair was neatly combed back, his sharp features striking beneath the soft glow of the lanterns. Behind his glasses, his gaze carried quiet power. He looked composed, almost untouchable. Yet for a brief moment, when his eyes met Fourth's, something shifted. A flicker of emotion. Something human, almost fragile. His gaze lingered just a second too long. Fourth swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. The ceremony was intimate. Just their families, a few vows, a signature, and two heirloom rings exchanged under the night sky. When Gemini reached for Fourth's hand, his touch was unexpectedly warm. "I, Gemini Norowit, take you, Fourth Natawat Jiroctical." Fourth repeated the words, his voice trembling. He focused on the ring, afraid to look up. Then came the final step, the kiss. It was supposed to be a simple formality, a brief touch for tradition's sake. But Gemini leaned in slowly, his hand resting gently on Fourth's cheek. "Just for a moment," he murmured softly. Then his lips brushed against Fourth's, light, careful, and fleeting. It was over in an instant, but it left Fourth breathless. His heart raced. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath until Gemini stepped back, his composure momentarily slipping. For the first time that night, the untouchable professor looked unsure. Later that evening, they arrived at Gemini's private house, a modern, quiet home overlooking the hills. Fourth sat silently in the car the whole drive, unsure how to act. Gemini didn't press him. He simply drove, calm as ever, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near Fourth's side, not touching, but close enough to notice. When they entered the house, Gemini's voice was even and polite. "I've prepared the guest room if that's more comfortable," he said. "But the master bedroom is yours too." Your things are already arranged. Fourth blinked. You mean, we're sharing a room? Gemini looked at him plainly. We're married, aren't we? Oh, right. Flustered, Fourth picked up his duffel bag. I'll, take a shower first. Gemini nodded. The heater's already on. 20 minutes later, Fourth stepped out of the bathroom wearing one of Gemini's oversized gray sweatshirts that reached his thighs. His damp hair clung to his forehead, and his skin was still pink from the warmth of the shower. Gemini turned at the sound of footsteps and paused mid-motion. For a second, his calm facade wavered. Fourth looked at him, confused. What? Did I do something wrong? Gemini cleared his throat, quickly averting his gaze. You look comfortable, he said, placing the glass of water he was holding a little too firmly on the table. There's an extra blanket on the bed if you need it. Fourth felt his ears burn. Thanks. I, didn't mean to look odd. You don't, Gemini replied quickly. He didn't look up again. He sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through a folder as if trying to distract himself. Fourth climbed onto the other side of the bed, wrapping himself in the blanket until only his eyes were visible. The room fell quiet, filled only by the sound of the rain tapping softly against the windows. Gemini? Fourth finally whispered. Gemini looked up from his papers. Are you upset that we got married? The question made Gemini pause. He turned to look at Fourth, his expression softer than before. No, he said quietly. I'm upset that you seem afraid of me. Fourth blinked in surprise. You won't even look me in the eye for more than 2 seconds, Gemini added. You're my professor, Fourth mumbled. And, well, you're kind of intimidating. Gemini's lips twitched, the hint of a smile forming. Is that all? Fourth hesitated. You're also, very good looking. Gemini chuckled under his breath. I'll take that as a compliment. Fourth groaned and buried his face in the blanket. I shouldn't have said that. The sound of Gemini's quiet laughter filled the space between them. The tension melted, just a little. Good night, Fourth said softly. Gemini glanced at him, his voice gentler now. Good night, Fourth. The lights dimmed. Neither of them slept easily that night, each aware of the other's presence, each wondering what kind of marriage they had just stepped into. Chapter 2. Gemini Norowit woke up the same way he did every morning, early, calm, and in control. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Because today, the moment he opened his eyes and turned his head, all of that composure faltered. Curled up beside him, on his side of the bed, no less, was Fourth. Still asleep. Still peaceful. Still breathing softly against the pillow. Wrapped in the duvet like a small, sleeping cat, Fourth clutched a corner of the blanket with both hands. His dark hair was messy, still faintly damp from the shower last night, and his long lashes brushed his cheeks with every slow breath. Gemini stared for a moment longer than he should have. No one should look that delicate in the morning. And definitely not in his bed. He exhaled quietly, forcing himself to look away. His eyes had lingered far too long, on the gentle rise and fall of Fourth's chest, the faint curve of his nose, the calm innocence of sleep. Enough. Gemini slipped out of bed, showered quickly, and changed into navy slacks and a crisp white shirt. By the time he returned, Fourth hadn't moved an inch, still buried in blankets, completely lost to the world. Fourth, Gemini said, voice calm but firm. No response. Fourth, he repeated. Still nothing. Gemini frowned, standing beside the bed uncertainly. He couldn't just nudge him awake. That felt wrong. How did one wake up their new husband without being awkward about it? He cleared his throat, giving up. I'll be in the kitchen. Fourth, perfectly comfortable, didn't move a muscle. Gemini pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Downstairs, the coffee machine hissed quietly. Gemini made himself a precise shot of espresso and sat at the dining table, tablet in hand, already reviewing a financial report. Back straight. Tie perfect. Expression unreadable. Business as usual. Or it would have been, if he wasn't listening for footsteps from upstairs. Fourth finally woke up to the soft hum of morning sunlight. He stretched under the blankets and blinked at the empty bed. Gemini was gone. The bathroom door stood open, and the faint scent of citrus soap still lingered in the air. "He didn't even wake me up?" Fourth muttered, sitting up with a sleepy pout. Still wearing the oversized gray sweatshirt, he brushed his hair with his fingers, then shuffled downstairs barefoot. There he found Gemini already seated, immaculate as always, sipping espresso and scanning what looked like an intimidating spreadsheet. How can someone be this perfect at 7 in the morning? Fourth cleared his throat. "Good morning." Gemini looked up briefly. "Good morning. You didn't wake me." "I tried." "With your eyes." Gemini raised an eyebrow. "I said your name. That's not how you wake someone up. You're supposed to, tap their shoulder or something." "I don't poke people," Gemini said flatly. Fourth muttered under his breath, "That explains a lot." For the first time that morning, Gemini's lips twitched slightly. Fourth sighed, wandering toward the kitchen. "I'll make breakfast." Gemini looked up. "You cook?" "I try," Fourth said proudly. "My scrambled eggs are kind of famous." Within minutes, Gemini realized why they were famous. The eggs fell. The shells followed. The oil sizzled too much. And the smoke alarm almost joined in. Fourth yelped, waving a towel dramatically over the stove. "I got it! I got it! Wait, maybe I don't?" By the time the smoke cleared, a plate sat on the counter. The eggs were technically scrambled. Gemini set down his tablet and approached cautiously, as if inspecting a science experiment. "I'm sorry," Fourth said quickly, cheeks flushed. "I know it's a mess. I just wanted to try." Gemini stared at the plate, then at him. Fourth fidgeted. "I'll clean it up." "Don't," Gemini interrupted gently. Fourth froze. "You're nervous around me," Gemini said quietly. "I'm not, okay, maybe a little," Fourth admitted. "You just look like you'd fire someone for burning your pan." "I don't fire people for eggs." Fourth pouted, lowering his shoulders. Gemini hesitated, then said stiffly, "It's edible." Fourth blinked. "You'll eat it?" "I didn't say that," Gemini replied, but he picked up the plate anyway. He sat down, fork in hand, and took a careful bite. "Fuzz, chew, swallow. Passable," he said finally. Fourth's grin was so bright that Gemini almost smiled too. Later that morning, Gemini handed Fourth a freshly pressed outfit and said simply, "We're going out for lunch." "Where?" "My parents' house." Fourth nearly dropped the shirt. "Already?" "They want to see you." "Oh no, I'm going to ruin this family in one meal." "You already burned breakfast," Gemini said calmly. "So, expectations are low." "Wow. Thanks. Just being honest." 40 minutes later, Fourth came down the stairs looking like an entirely different person. He wore cream trousers and a pale blue shirt tucked neatly at the waist, his hair styled perfectly, a faint shine on his lips, and the gold wedding band glinting under the light. Gemini, who had just been checking his watch, forgot how to move. Fourth tilted his head. "You're staring." "You're overdressed," Gemini said too quickly. "You told me to dress nicely." "You actually listen now?" Fourth rolled his eyes. "You're impossible." Gemini's parents' house was less of a house and more of a manor, grand, elegant, and a little overwhelming. Fourth gripped the bouquet they brought like it was his only lifeline. He had met Gemini's parents before, but now it felt completely different. This time, he was standing in front of them as their son's husband. Fourth. Gemini's mother appeared at the top of the stairs, glowing in a cream-colored dress and pearls. She hurried down and pulled him into a warm embrace before he could even bow. "My sweet boy," she said happily. "You've grown even more handsome. And married to my son, what an angel you must be." Fourth flushed. "Ah, thank you, ma'am." "Gemini didn't even bring flowers for me," she teased, eyeing her son. "But my other son did." "It was his idea," Fourth said quickly. "Liar," Gemini muttered under his breath. His mother laughed and clapped her hands together. "Come now, let's have lunch. I want to hear everything. How was the wedding ceremony? Was it beautiful?" Fourth's cheeks turned red. "It was quiet," he managed. "Good," she said warmly. "You both deserve a peaceful start." Gemini's expression softened, just a little. For the first time in years, he allowed himself the smallest smile. Chapter 3. Lunch turned out far less disastrous than Fourth expected. It was actually heartwarming. Gemini's mother sat beside him the entire time, gently urging him to eat more. Every few minutes, she added another piece of grilled fish to his plate as if he hadn't already eaten enough. Her tone was light and teasing, her smile full of warmth. Gemini never finishes his vegetables. Please scold him for me. Ma, Gemini muttered without looking up from his plate. Fourth stifled a laugh. Meanwhile, Gemini's father simply beamed, sipping his soup and watching the interaction like a man completely content with life. You look even younger in person, Fourth, he said with a chuckle. I thought Gemini married a teenager. He practically did, Gemini's mother teased. But our son clearly has good taste. Ma, Gemini repeated, his expression deadpan. Fourth tried to hide his blush behind his glass of water. After the meal, they sat together on the living room's plush white couch, listening to the birds outside and the soft classical music drifting through the air. Gemini didn't talk much, he rarely did, but Fourth noticed his gaze lingering more often. Not cold or distant anymore. Just unreadable. Eventually, Gemini stood. We should head back. Fourth bowed politely. Thank you for the meal, kun four. Gemini's mother smiled and handed Fourth a small, beautifully wrapped box. Open this later tonight. It's for newlyweds. Fourth blinked in confusion. Gemini took it quickly and tucked it under his arm. We're leaving. Take care. The car ride home was quiet, but comfortably so. It was the kind of silence filled with rustling wind and soft glances that didn't need words. Until Fourth noticed something. Gemini? This isn't the way home. Gemini didn't respond immediately. Then calmly, I'm taking a longer route. Fourth frowned. Are you kidnapping me? Gemini shot him a flat look. Fourth grinned, leaning against the window dramatically. Please, I'm too young to disappear in the woods. We're not in the woods. Yet. But instead of arguing, Gemini pulled the car to a gentle stop at a wide curve, where a quiet lake shimmered under the afternoon sun. The hills surrounded them like soft arms, and the trees swayed lightly in the breeze, a peaceful, hidden place that looked untouched by time. Whoa, Fourth whispered as Gemini opened the door for him. You like strawberry juice, don't you? Gemini asked, retrieving a cold bottle from the back seat. How'd you know? My mother talks too much, Gemini replied, handing it over. Fourth took it, smiling softly. They sat on the hood of the car, legs dangling, breeze warm against their faces. After a while, Gemini spoke quietly. Why'd you agree to marry me? You're so young. You could have chosen someone closer to your age. Fourth looked at him in surprise. Gemini wasn't looking at him. His eyes were on the lake, thoughtful, uncertain. I thought you'd ask that on the wedding day, Fourth admitted. Or maybe that night. You were too nervous. You were too scary. Gemini didn't argue. Fourth smiled faintly, then sighed. My dad told me I didn't have to say yes. That I could refuse. And? I remembered you from campus, Fourth said, twisting the cap of his juice bottle. You were quiet but fair. Honest. Then, Gemini turned slightly. And? Fourth grinned. You're attractive. Gemini blinked. You think someone 8 years older than you is attractive? Only you, Fourth murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Gemini turned away, the tips of his ears pink. You're still a kid. I'm legally your husband. Unfortunately. You still bought me juice. Gemini sighed, shaking his head. Then, a gust of wind blew Fourth's hair into his eyes. Before he could move, Gemini reached over and gently brushed his fringe aside, tucking a lock of hair behind his ear. For a brief moment, his hand lingered near Fourth's cheek, light, hesitant, warm. Both froze. Fourth looked up at him, wide-eyed. Gemini's face was unreadable. Then, like realizing what he'd done, he quickly withdrew his hand. Let's go. Okay, Fourth whispered, and the moment passed. The drive home was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't comfortable. Fourth stared out the window, sipping his juice nervously. Gemini kept his eyes on the road, as calm and unreadable as ever. By the time they got home, the golden sunset had filled the house with light. Fourth plopped down on the couch with a sigh. "Can I open the gift box now?" "If you want," Gemini said, hanging his coat. Fourth unwrapped the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside were a bottle of imported wine, a fancy box of chocolates, and... "Oh no!" Fourth blinked, face turning red. Gemini leaned over to look, then froze. Inside were several newlywed gifts, things meant for privacy, not public viewing. "Your mom is," Fourth began awkwardly. "Unfiltered," Gemini said flatly. Later that evening, Gemini was reading in his study when he heard a wrapper being opened. He looked up, then stood. When he walked into the living room, Fourth was happily munching on a piece of chocolate. "What are you doing?" Gemini asked slowly. "Trying the chocolate," Fourth said innocently. "It's the strawberry one. It's really good." Gemini blinked. "Fourth, you probably shouldn't eat that." "Why not?" "It's not expired." Gemini exhaled. "Because it's special." "Special? Let's just say it's meant for adults." Fourth's eyes widened. "Oh no, I already ate it." Gemini rubbed his temples. "You really should read labels." "They were in French. I thought it meant berry bliss." Gemini looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Fourth groaned, hiding his face. "This is so embarrassing." "You'll be fine. Just drink water," Gemini said, trying not to laugh. "We're never visiting your mom again." "She meant well," Gemini muttered. "She gave us, never mind. I can't even say it out loud." Gemini stood, shaking his head. "You're going to bed early." "But I'm not sleepy." "Then read something. Or take a cold shower." "Are you kicking me out of the living room?" "I'm saving us both from more embarrassment." Fourth pouted. "You're no fun." Gemini turned away, but a small smile ghosted on his lips. "Good night, Fourth." Fourth sighed and headed upstairs, still red-faced but smiling faintly. Gemini leaned against the wall once he was gone, silently vowing to hide anything else that came from his mother ever again. Chapter 4. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting golden stripes across Gemini's immaculate bedroom. He stood beside the bed, arms stiffly at his sides, staring down at the mound of blankets on one side. "Fourth," he called, voice calm and steady. No response. He frowned slightly, leaning closer. "Fourth." A sleepy grumble came from under the blanket cocoon. Gemini sighed. "You'll be late." Another muffled sound, something between a whine and a sigh. He hesitated. Reaching out to wake him felt strangely intimate. But after a moment, Gemini gently poked the blanket. "Get up." A quiet groan answered him. "Fourth." "Ugh. Good enough." By the time Fourth stumbled into the kitchen, his hair was sticking out in every direction and his oversized hoodie sleeves nearly covered his hands. Gemini had already set the table. No suspicious chocolates this time, just neatly stacked pancakes, golden and perfect, with syrup and butter on the side. "Morning," Fourth mumbled, sliding into a chair. Gemini looked up from his coffee. "Feeling better?" "Barely survived the chocolate incident," Fourth muttered, glaring at the syrup bottle. "Still emotionally scarred." Gemini raised an eyebrow. "You ate half. And lost half my dignity." Gemini bit back a smile. "Eat. You made pancakes? Better than you burning the kitchen again." Fourth grinned. "You're like a grumpy househusband." Gemini nearly choked on his coffee. After breakfast, they both got ready. Gemini wore his usual attire, a crisp black shirt, gray slacks, and a matching tie. His hair was neatly combed, his expression unreadable, like a character straight out of a university drama. Fourth, on the other hand, came down the stairs in a lavender hoodie, light jeans, and small silver earrings shaped like cats. Gemini froze. He cleared his throat quickly and looked away, pretending to check his watch. Control. He needed control. As they neared the campus, Gemini slowed the car and parked 1 block away from the main gate. "Here." Fourth blinked. "Huh. You'll get off here. Why? It's better if people don't see us arriving together. Fourth frowned. So, I'm your secret now? Nobody knows we're married, Gemini said quietly. Fourth sighed, exaggerating his disappointment. Fine. But I'm stealing extra pancakes next time. Gemini almost smiled. Almost. Class that day was normal. Almost. Gemini stood at the front, explaining corporate mergers with calm authority. He didn't glance at Fourth once. Fourth, however, was another story. He sat near the middle row, chin resting on his palm, lips in a stubborn pout. Every few minutes, his eyes wandered back to Gemini, half annoyed, half admiring. When class ended, students began packing up. Two girls passing by giggled softly. Professor Gemini is so handsome, one whispered. I heard he might be seeing someone, said the other. Lucky girl. Fourth froze. His pout deepened. He stuffed his pen into his bag so hard he nearly broke the zipper. Gemini's phone buzzed just then. After a glance, he looked up, and his eyes found Fourth immediately. Mr. Natawat, Gemini called, voice even but firm. Please see me in my office. But I already submitted. Now. The girls gasped. Fourth's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. Oh no. Oh yes. Was this what it felt like to be summoned by your mysterious professor husband? Because his heart was racing for all the wrong reasons. Gemini's office on the top floor was sleek, modern, and far too quiet. Fourth entered and shut the door. So, assignments, huh? He said, crossing his arms. Gemini didn't look up from his screen. You were sulking all morning. I was not. You glared through my entire lecture. Maybe because your fan club called you handsome. Gemini's typing stopped. And they said your girlfriend was lucky, Fourth added. Gemini finally looked up. Fourth was pouting again, arms crossed, face adorably serious. Gemini exhaled softly, the corners of his lips twitching. Jealous. You didn't even deny it, Fourth said accusingly. I didn't confirm it either. You also called me Mr. Natawat. Like I'm just another student. In class you are. Outside class, I'm your husband. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken things. Gemini leaned back, folding his arms. And what would you prefer I call you during lectures? Dear? Sweetheart? Fourth's face turned red. Stop it. Favorite student, maybe? Gemini. Gemini smirked. Fourth stomped closer and planted his hands on the desk. You think this is funny? A little. I could tell everyone you made me pancakes. You could. Or that you fixed my hair yesterday. That would be interesting gossip. Gemini. Their eyes met. And just like that, the air shifted. Gemini's teasing expression softened. You're adorable when you're jealous, he said quietly. Fourth froze. Gemini stood slowly and walked around the desk until he was standing just a step away. Fourth's back met the door. His heartbeat picked up. You pout when you're mad, Gemini continued. Do you know that? No. And when you wear that hoodie, you make it hard for me to stay composed. Fourth blinked, speechless. Gemini's gaze softened even more. You're impossible sometimes. To who? Fourth asked weakly. To me. For a second, the world felt still. Then Gemini stepped back, his calm, professor-like tone returning. That'll be all, Mr. Natawat. Gemini. You're dismissed. Fourth's mouth opened, then closed. He finally turned and walked out, cheeks flushed. Gemini leaned back in his chair, exhaling quietly as the door shut. He was going to lose his composure one of these days, because of that bright, jealous, and endlessly endearing boy he somehow called his husband. And honestly, he didn't mind one bit. Chapter 5. The afternoon sun dipped lazily behind the university rooftops as classes ended, casting a soft golden glow over the crowd of students spilling through the gates. Fourth stood near the side entrance, waiting exactly where Gemini had told him to. Though he was still slightly annoyed about being dropped off a block away that morning, he waited obediently, like a loyal husband, with a very dramatic pout. Gemini's sleek black car rolled up moments later. The passenger door unlocked with a soft click. Get in, Gemini said, his tone even. Fourth slid into the seat, arms folded tightly. You didn't even text me when you arrived. I said 4:30 sharp, Gemini replied, pulling away from the curb. Still could have sent a heart emoji or something. I don't use emojis. Fourth gasped as if insulted. You should. I sent you memes and you didn't even react. I was driving. Excuses. Gemini exhaled slowly. You're sulking again. And you're ignoring me again, Fourth muttered. Gemini glanced at him. You're not scared of me anymore? Not really, Fourth said, puffing his cheeks and turning to the window. The car filled with a quiet that wasn't tense, but not exactly peaceful either. Then out of nowhere, stop the car. Gemini slammed on the brakes, startled. What happened? Ice cream. Fourth pointed eagerly at a small local shop across the street. They have strawberry and mint choco chip, and it's 10% off. Gemini blinked. You nearly gave me a heart attack for ice cream. Fourth turned to him with bright, pleading eyes. Can we go? Gemini tried to stay composed, but one look at that hopeful face was enough to break his resolve. Fine, he sighed. He pulled over like a very patient man, or perhaps a soft-hearted husband. A few minutes later, Fourth came skipping back with 2 cones in hand. Here, he said cheerfully, offering one. Vanilla with crushed nuts. Your aura says this flavor. Gemini blinked. My aura? Cold. But with a little sweetness if people look close enough. That's oddly accurate, Gemini murmured. Fourth smiled proudly and licked his own strawberry cone. And mine's strawberry because I'm cute and romantic. Gemini stayed silent, because he was trying not to notice the way Fourth smiled between each bite, or the way the sunlight hit his face through the windshield. It was just ice cream, he reminded himself. Sweet, harmless ice cream. Want a bite? Fourth offered innocently, holding his cone toward him. Gemini looked away, gripping the steering wheel. No, thank you. Why not? It's really good. Fourth leaned forward, studying his face. You look red. Are you okay? I'm fine, Gemini said a little too quickly. Fourth tilted his head. You're acting weird again. Gemini coughed softly and focused on the road. Just finish your ice cream. Fourth shrugged and continued eating happily, completely unaware of how flustered his husband was beside him. The soft hums of satisfaction didn't help either. Gemini decided he might never look at strawberry ice cream the same way again. The drive home was quiet after that. Fourth chattered occasionally about classes, the latest gossip, and how one of his professors gave extra credit just for being cute. Gemini only hummed in response, doing his best not to let his mind wander. When they finally reached home, Fourth hopped out cheerfully. That was fun. We should get ice cream again sometime. Gemini didn't respond. He was too busy silently lecturing himself to stay calm. Are you coming? Fourth called from the elevator. Gemini took a deep breath, whispered a silent prayer for patience, and followed. Later that evening, after both had showered, Fourth curled up on the couch scrolling through Netflix. Gemini, he called. Gemini appeared from the kitchen, sleeves rolled up. Yes. Movie night. Now. It's Friday. You're off tomorrow. Come on, it's our boring husband bonding time. Gemini hesitated, then nodded. All right. He sat down beside Fourth, carefully leaving a small space between them. Fourth noticed immediately and scooted closer with a teasing grin. They watched a romantic comedy. The couple on screen argued, made up, and kissed under the rain. Fourth giggled at the funny parts, occasionally tossing popcorn at the TV when things got too cheesy. Gemini pretended to be focused on the movie, but really he was watching Fourth more. The way his expressions shifted, the way his laughter softened the room, it was disarming. Halfway through, Fourth yawned and leaned sideways. Gemini stiffened as a warm head landed on his shoulder. He froze. Fourth murmured sleepily, "You're warm?" Gemini stayed completely still, afraid to even breathe too loudly. The television played softly in the background, the room glowing in gentle light. And for a moment, the world outside didn't exist, just the quiet rhythm of two hearts learning how to share the same space. Gemini looked down at the sleeping figure on his shoulder and sighed softly. He wasn't sure what he had done to deserve someone like Fourth, bright, unpredictable, and endlessly patient with his coldness. But as he sat there, letting his sunshine husband sleep against him, Gemini knew one thing for certain. This was a kind of chaos he didn't mind having in his life. Chapter 6. Gemini had always been an early riser. He liked structure, silence, and the calm of mornings. So when he stepped into the living room that Saturday at 7 a.m., freshly showered and expecting neat order, he instead found a small bundle of chaos asleep on the couch. Fourth, curled up like a cat. He was still in his hoodie, one foot dangling off the edge, surrounded by crumpled tissues, an empty popcorn tub, and a TV quietly playing the ending credits of a romantic comedy. A blanket had slipped halfway to the floor. Gemini stood still, torn between amusement and disbelief. Then, before he even realized what he was doing, he picked up the fallen blanket and gently draped it back over Fourth's sleeping form. He adjusted it carefully, tucking it around his knees. For a brief moment, his eyes lingered on Fourth's face, peaceful, soft, completely at ease. Gemini quickly cleared his throat. Because this feeling? This warmth in his chest? Dangerous. By mid-morning, Fourth finally woke up, stretching and yawning before bouncing into the kitchen. Gemini sat at the breakfast bar, sipping black coffee and reading news on his tablet. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad for successful men who never oversleep. Morning, Fourth greeted, voice light and bright. "You fell asleep on the couch?" Gemini replied without looking up. "You didn't even carry me to bed?" Fourth pouted, opening cabinets as if he'd lived there for years, which technically he now did. "I'm not the main lead in a romance drama," Gemini said dryly. Fourth stuck his tongue out, rummaging through the fridge. Gemini didn't say it aloud, but he noticed how comfortable Fourth looked now, no longer shy or awkward, just lively and at home. It was nice. Progress. Then suddenly, "Let's go grocery shopping," Fourth declared with a grin. Gemini blinked. "Now." "Up. We don't have anything here except water, coffee, and oats. No ramen. No snacks. Not even toothpaste. I'll just order online." "Nope," Fourth said firmly, already slipping into his shoes. "I want the full husband experience." Gemini sighed. That sounds like a trap. But he got up anyway, because Fourth was already waiting by the door with an oversized tote bag. The grocery store turned out to be pure chaos. Fourth led the way, dragging Gemini through the aisles like an overly enthusiastic tour guide. "These noodles have cute anime characters on them. We're getting them." Gemini opened his mouth to object. "Sure," Fourth cut him off, tossing 3 packs into the cart. "Trust me. I've tasted them in a dream." Gemini sighed deeply. In the snack aisle, Fourth somehow managed to sneak an armful of spicy chips into the cart while Gemini was distracted reading nutrition labels. In the frozen section, he got into a playful argument with a toddler over the last pack of dinosaur-shaped nuggets. The toddler's mother blinked at the sight of Gemini, tall, poised, in a tailored coat, standing quietly beside the scene. "I'm sorry," the woman whispered awkwardly. "I'm used to it," Gemini replied politely. By the time they reached the bakery, Gemini felt 5 years older. Fourth, meanwhile, was sniffing croissants and holding up heart-shaped cookies with glittery pink icing. "Can we get these?" he asked hopefully. Gemini glanced from the cookies to his husband's beaming face. "Fine," Fourth gasped. "You're spoiling me. I'm regretting everything. Hurry." "You love it," Fourth teased. Gemini didn't answer, but maybe a little part of him did. They were almost done when Gemini suddenly froze. "Oh no," he muttered. "What's wrong?" Fourth asked. "End of the aisle. Pink skirt. Business studies major. She's in your elective class." Fourth stiffened. "Did she see us?" "She looked this way," Gemini said quietly. Panic flickered in both their eyes. Their marriage was still a secret. No one at the university could know. If word got out that Professor Norowit and one of his students were grocery shopping together, laughing over cookies and strawberry milk, it would be chaos. Without thinking, Gemini grabbed Fourth's wrist. "Come here." "Huh." Before Fourth could react, Gemini gently pulled him into the next aisle, the cleaning supplies section, and pressed him back against a shelf stacked with lemon-scented disinfectant. "Gemini?" Fourth whispered, startled. "Shoo," Gemini murmured, glancing toward the aisle entrance. He stood close, too close, one arm braced beside Fourth's head, the other holding the cart like a barrier between them and curious eyes. Fourth froze. His heart raced. Gemini's face was only inches away, their breaths mingling softly in the narrow space. Footsteps passed by. Then silence. "She's gone," Gemini exhaled quietly. But neither of them moved. Fourth looked up at him, cheeks pink. "You almost kissed me." Gemini blinked. "I was just hiding our faces." "You didn't have to be that close," Fourth mumbled. "She already left before you pulled me here." Gemini paused. "What?" "I saw her walk out the door," Fourth said softly, eyes lowered. "But you still pulled me anyway." Their eyes met. For a long second, neither spoke. Fourth bit his lip, and Gemini noticed. Too clearly. The air felt charged, full of words neither dared to say. Then Gemini stepped back, clearing his throat. "Not in public," he said, voice quieter than usual. "We should go." Fourth blinked, trying to hide the small flicker of disappointment. "Oh, okay." They continued to the checkout counter in silence. The car ride home was quiet too, but in a different way. Not cold. Just heavy with something unsaid. Gemini tapped the steering wheel. Fourth watched the city lights pass through the window. Finally, he spoke softly. "You can kiss me, just not if it's to hide me." Gemini's hand froze. But Fourth didn't say anything else. He didn't need to, because Gemini's ears burned all the way home. Chapter 7. For once, the day had been peaceful. No sudden hiding in grocery aisles. No mysterious chocolates with side effects. No meltdowns over popsicles. Just simple, ordinary moments. Gemini made lunch, pasta, the one thing he trusted Fourth not to accidentally burn. They did laundry. Well, Gemini folded, while Fourth got distracted by socks that looked like they belonged in a sad romantic movie. Later, they sat on the couch, scrolling through endless Netflix choices, debating what to watch but never actually deciding. It was calm. Almost normal. Until night came. And with it returned the quiet tension that neither of them could quite name. Half anticipation, half hesitation. A fragile balance between what they felt and what they feared to admit. Gemini sat at the edge of the bed, checking work emails on his tablet. The soft click of the bathroom door made him glance up, and everything else faded. Fourth stepped out, towel in hand, drying his hair with lazy swipes. Droplets slid down his neck, catching the light. But what really made Gemini's breath catch wasn't that. It was the shirt. His shirt. Long-sleeved, but loose. Far too big for Fourth, hanging off one shoulder and brushing lightly against his thighs. "Sorry," Fourth murmured, not looking up. "I couldn't find my sleep shirt. I thought this was mine but—" Gemini stared, wordless. "I'll change," Fourth said quickly, turning toward the dresser. "No," Gemini blurted out, too fast, too sharp. Fourth froze. Gemini cleared his throat, softer this time. "It's fine. You can keep it." The air between them shifted, thicker now. Fourth walked toward the dresser, fingers tugging at the hem of the shirt. Gemini's eyes followed before he could stop himself. Every small movement sent alarms through his mind. "He's your husband," he reminded himself. This shouldn't feel dangerous. And yet it did. He forced himself to look away, focus on anything else. A sharp yelp broke the silence. Gemini looked up just in time to see Fourth clutching his toe, hopping in pain. "What happened?" Gemini stood quickly. "That dresser hates me," Fourth whimpered dramatically. Gemini instinctively reached out, steadying him by the wrist. "Sit down before you fall." But it was too late. In the rush of movement, they both lost balance and fell straight onto the bed. A tangle of limbs and startled gasps. Gemini landed above Fourth, one knee sinking into the mattress, A hand braced beside Fourth's head. Their faces, so close. Close enough for Gemini to see the small mole beneath Fourth's left eye. Close enough to feel the warmth of Fourth's breath against his lips. Neither moved. One heartbeat. 2, 3. If you don't want me, Fourth whispered, voice trembling, just say it. Gemini froze. The words hit harder than he expected. Before he could speak, Fourth pushed lightly at his chest, rolling away and curling up on the other side of the bed, back turned. Fourth. Forget it. I wasn't. Don't explain, Fourth cut in, his voice muffled against the pillow. I understand. Gemini sighed, frustration mixing with concern. You don't. I do, Fourth said quickly. I know this whole marriage was arranged. You didn't even want it. I'm loud and messy, and I probably annoy you every 5 minutes. I wear your clothes without asking and, his voice cracked slightly, you've never even tried to kiss me. Not once. Not even on our wedding night. I didn't want to scare you, Gemini said quietly. That made Fourth pause. What? Gemini sat at the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. You looked afraid of me when we first married. I've been trying not to make things worse. I didn't want to cross any boundaries or make you feel like this was forced. Fourth's voice softened. But, you've thought about it, haven't you? Kissing me? Gemini turned, meeting his eyes through the dim light. I think about kissing you every 5 minutes, he admitted. Fourth's eyes widened. And I think about a lot of other things too, Gemini added, tone calm but honest. Especially when you're wearing that shirt and lying there looking like that. Fourth's mouth fell open, startled. Then why don't you? Because, Gemini interrupted gently, I'm trying to be decent. I won't touch you unless I'm sure you want me to. Silence filled the room again. Then, so softly it almost got lost in the quiet. I do. Gemini's heart stopped for a moment. Fourth's cheeks were flushed, his voice barely above a whisper. I do want you to. The air shifted again, not exploding, but deepening. Gemini slowly reached over, brushing Fourth's bangs away from his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. Fourth leaned into the touch, eyes fluttering closed. Next time, he murmured, if you almost kiss me, just actually do it. Gemini exhaled softly, a small smile breaking through his restraint. Then, without another word, he pulled the blanket over them both. No confessions. No dramatic declarations. Just quiet breathing, steady and warm. And something new, something real, beginning to take root between them. Chapter 8. A few days passed. And slowly, beautifully, the awkwardness between them began to fade. Not completely, but enough. Enough for Gemini to start handing Fourth a warm cup of coffee before class, always in secret. Enough for Fourth to start leaving sticky notes on Gemini's laptop with messages like, drink water, Professor Grump. I'm not kissing you until you kiss me first. The air between them had changed. There were sparks now. Quiet ones. Gentle, private moments that only the two of them shared. Gemini wasn't cold anymore. He was thoughtful, patient, kind in small, deliberate ways that made Fourth blush every time. Holding doors open without being asked. Guiding Fourth through crowded hallways with a steady hand at his back. Catching his wrist when he stumbled for the 5th time that week. And holding on just a moment longer than necessary. Fourth would never admit it aloud, but he was falling. And the hardest part? Gemini still hadn't kissed him. At first, Fourth told himself it was fine. Maybe Gemini was waiting for the right moment. Maybe he wanted to take things slow. Maybe he was just trying to be careful. But over time, doubts began to creep in. What if Gemini didn't want him that way? What if he was too young, too clumsy, too cute, instead of attractive? What if Gemini preferred someone polished, elegant, mature, someone who wasn't him? So Fourth did what any confused, slightly dramatic person in love would do. He sulked. Gemini noticed immediately. He frowned at breakfast when Fourth didn't hum after his first bite of pancake. He tried adding more syrup. Fourth just poked at his plate. Gemini set down his fork. Did I do something wrong? Silence. Are you upset with me? He asked carefully. No answer. Gemini sighed, looking like a perfectly dressed but emotionally lost man. Sharp suit, neat hair, and the expression of a very confused golden retriever. But Fourth wasn't finished. He wanted to make a point. He wanted Gemini to see that he wasn't just the younger one in this marriage. He could be confident, grown, desirable. So, the next morning he changed his entire look. Gone was the soft, oversized hoodie. In its place, a fitted black shirt tucked into dark jeans, silver accessories glinting at his wrists, hair styled to perfection, a touch of gloss on his lips, and confidence in every step. When Gemini walked out of the bedroom, adjusting his watch, he froze. Completely. For a man known for his composure, he suddenly looked like someone who had forgotten how to breathe. Ready to go? Fourth asked casually, slinging his bag over one shoulder. Gemini blinked, eyes wide. You're not wearing that to class. Fourth raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because, Gemini said, struggling to sound calm, half the university might lose their minds seeing you like that. Fourth shrugged as he brushed past him. That's their problem, not mine. Gemini exhaled deeply. I'm not driving you like that. But he did. And it was chaos. The moment Fourth stepped onto campus, heads turned. Students whispered. Some stared. Some smiled a little too long. Gemini watched from the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly the leather protested. By the time he walked into his lecture, he was a quiet storm. Then he saw it, a group of students outside the library trying to flirt with Fourth. Fourth politely brushed them off, but Gemini's patience was already wearing thin. That was the final straw. After his class ended, his voice echoed across the hall. Mr. Natawat, my office. Now. The room fell silent. Fourth blinked, then stood, adjusting his bag with a defiant tilt of his chin. He followed Gemini down the corridor, the tension thick between them. The office door clicked shut. Gemini turned, his expression unreadable. Fourth crossed his arms. What's this about? Gemini looked at him for a long moment. Do you think this is funny? What is? This, Gemini said quietly. The way you're dressed. The way people were looking at you today. Fourth smiled faintly. Is that a problem, Professor? Because I plan on dressing like this from now on. Gemini's eyes darkened. You really don't understand, do you? Oh, I understand perfectly, Fourth replied. You're possessive, but not enough to actually act like it. Gemini froze. Fourth stepped closer, tapping a finger against his chest. You don't want anyone else looking at me, but you won't even look at me like I matter. Gemini's voice was low when he spoke. I look at you like you're everything. Then prove it, Fourth whispered. Act like it, Gemini. A heartbeat. A breath. Then Gemini moved. In an instant, Fourth found himself backed against the edge of the desk. Gemini close enough that he could feel his warmth, his hands braced on either side. Fourth's breath caught. Gemini's voice was steady, quiet but intense. Do you have any idea what you do to me? Fourth opened his mouth to reply. But before he could, there was a knock at the door. Professor Norowit? They both froze. Professor? May I come in? The voice called again. Gemini blinked, then stepped back quickly, clearing his throat. Fourth exhaled, muttering under his breath, Oh, for goodness sake. Gemini turned to him, startled. You just muttered. Fourth glared. So? Gemini smiled faintly for the first time that day. It was kind of cute. Fourth rolled his eyes. You're impossible. Gemini's grin softened. Maybe, but I'm still yours. Fourth looked away, cheeks warm. As if. But his smile gave him away. Chapter 9. It started with clumsy hands. Fourth, in his usual weekend chaos, decided to help prepare dinner. Tried to help, at least. He wore an oversized apron that dragged behind him like a cape. His sleeves were rolled up, his brow furrowed in deep focus as he tried to slice tomatoes with what could only be described as dangerous determination, dangerous mostly to himself. Gemini watched from across the kitchen, leaning casually against the counter, arms crossed. He was wearing a plain black house shirt, his expression amused beyond words. You're going to cut your fingers, Gemini murmured. I am helping, Fourth said stubbornly, tongue peeking out in concentration. You're stressing the knife, Gemini replied, taking a step closer. Fourth huffed, determined. Let me do something. You always cook. I just wanna. The knife slipped. Fourth yelped, but luckily, no blood. Instead, the cutting board tilted, sending the tomatoes sliding off the counter. In his panic, Fourth stumbled backward, straight into Gemini. For a moment, everything froze. Fourth blinked up at him. Gemini didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. At the flushed cheeks, the parted lips, the soft curve of Fourth's neck revealed by the fallen apron strap. Something shifted in Gemini's chest. Gemini, Fourth began softly. But the words never came. Gemini leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't rushed, it was gentle, certain, and full of everything neither of them had dared to say. The kiss deepened slowly. Gemini's hand came up to cradle Fourth's cheek, guiding him closer, their movements shy yet sure, like they were finding something they had both been missing. Fourth melted into him, breath catching. His fingers clutched at Gemini's shirt, heart pounding like a drum. And then, Gemini stopped. He pulled back, breathing unevenly, his forehead resting against Fourth's. Tell me, Gemini whispered, voice rough but soft, when you're ready. Fourth's chest rose and fell rapidly. His lips trembled, eyes wide, unsure. Gemini stepped away. Fourth, dinner was awkward. Fourth couldn't look him in the eye, choosing instead to poke at his rice like it had wronged him. Across the table, Gemini looked far too pleased with himself, arms crossed, calm, a teasing smile tugging at his lips. At one point, Fourth threw a piece of tofu at him. Gemini caught it, with chopsticks, and smiled wider. His husband was adorably shy after their first kiss. That night, things went back to their usual routine. Sort of. They started out sleeping on opposite sides of the bed, pretending nothing had changed. But around 2 in the morning, Gemini shifted, half asleep, reaching for the blanket, and accidentally pulled Fourth along with it. They ended up face to face, tangled under the sheets, close enough to feel each other's warmth. No words were spoken. But Fourth didn't move away. And Gemini didn't let go. The next day brought its own kind of trouble. Fourth walked into university glowing, his skin radiant, his eyes bright, his smile softer than usual. And Gemini? He walked into class with that same knowing smirk, sleeves rolled up, voice smooth as he lectured. Students whispered, "Professor looks extra good today," and a few curious glances were cast toward Fourth, who tried his best to act normal. But no one suspected a thing. No one guessed that the quiet student and the calm, serious professor were actually married, or that just last night, that very professor had stolen his husband's breath away in a kitchen filled with tomatoes and unspoken feelings. Chapter 10. It started with a blush. No, actually it never stopped. Ever since that unforgettable kiss in the kitchen, Fourth had developed a serious problem. A full body, unstoppable, every time he's near me kind of blush problem. Whenever Gemini so much as looked at him for longer than 2 seconds, Fourth turned red. When Gemini leaned in to check his notes in class, blush. When Gemini brushed past him on the couch, blush. When Gemini yawned in the morning, hair tousled, shirt half-buttoned, and eyes still sleepy. Catastrophic, can't breathe, hide under the blanket level blush. And Gemini? Gemini was absolutely delighted. He had discovered his new favorite pastime, making his husband flustered. It was a lazy Saturday afternoon, grocery day. Fourth, dressed in a soft mint hoodie with his hair messy from the wind, tugged Gemini through the aisles like an excited kid. His cheeks were already pink as he tossed snacks and sweets into the cart, completely ignoring the nutrition labels. "No more cookies," Gemini said firmly, reaching out to stop him as another pack hovered above the cart. Fourth paused, looked up, then pouted. Gemini blinked. The pout. Those wide, pleading eyes. That tiny stomp of his foot. "Don't give me that face," Gemini warned, though his resolve was already slipping. Too late. Before he could stop himself, Gemini leaned in and kissed the pout. Right there, in front of the cookie shelf. Just a soft, quick, affectionate kiss, but enough to make Fourth freeze. And from the next aisle, a pair of amused aunties gasped. One of them squealed. Fourth turned bright red. Not pink, full-on cherry red. He covered his face with both hands. You can't just... In public. Gemini tilted his head, pretending to look confused. What? I was hungry. For cookies. Fourth spluttered. For you, Gemini said, perfectly serious. Fourth groaned into his hands, wishing the floor would swallow him whole. But Gemini wasn't done. For the rest of the shopping trip, he refused to let go of Fourth's hand. He held it down the ramen aisle, squeezed it while they picked out eggs, and intertwined their fingers as Fourth reached for the milk. By the time they reached the beverage section, Fourth had given up trying to escape. But then Gemini stopped walking, his hand pulling gently until Fourth turned. Before he knew it, Fourth found himself backed against the cool freezer glass, Gemini's arms braced on either side. His breath hitched. Gemini, what are you doing? He whispered, eyes wide. The freezer behind him was cold. Gemini's breath was warm. I was thinking, Gemini said in a low, even tone as he brushed a strand of hair from Fourth's face, we should go on a honeymoon. Fourth blinked, stunned. A honeymoon? You're my husband, Gemini said simply. I want us to have a proper one. Fourth's heart raced. His grip tightened on the juice bottle he was holding. You could have said that normally, he muttered, looking anywhere but his husband's eyes. Gemini leaned closer, a teasing smile in his voice. Say yes. Fourth tried to glare, but it came out more like a shy pout. Yes, he mumbled. You're impossible. And that was the weirdest honeymoon proposal ever. Gemini straightened, grinning from ear to ear. I'll take that as a yes. And so, Professor Gemini, the calm, collected, and supposedly cold-hearted academic, spent the rest of the supermarket trip following his blushing, flustered husband around like an overgrown golden retriever with hearts in his eyes. Chapter 11. Planning the honeymoon was supposed to be simple. Pick a place. Book it. Pack the bags. Done. But nothing was ever simple when one husband was a blushing mess and the other was a dangerously smug tease. 2 weeks before fourth semester break. Maldives. Yes. Alright. Bora Bora. Yes. Fourth blinked in disbelief. He was sitting cross-legged on their bed, laptop open to travel websites, a notepad filled with messy scribbles of pros and cons. Gemini, he said slowly, tapping the pen against his chin, you've said yes to every single place I've mentioned. Across from him, Gemini sat at the head of the bed in his robe, glasses perched on his nose, a business magazine open on his lap. He didn't even look up. Because, Gemini said calmly, I'll say yes to anywhere you want to go. Fourth frowned. Are you even listening to the options? I am, Gemini replied, flipping another page. I just don't care where we go, as long as it's private and you're there. Fourth groaned dramatically. That's not how planning a honeymoon works. We need to consider things like flights, activities, weather, and food. What if we go to Iceland and the only thing we can eat is boiled sheep heads? Gemini finally looked up, eyebrows raised. Did you just say boiled sheep heads? It's real, Fourth said, holding up his phone, an article already open. See? It's a traditional dish. Gemini leaned closer as if to inspect the screen, but his eyes softened as he looked at Fourth instead. His husband's brows were furrowed in concentration, his lips forming a cute pout, one foot tapping restlessly against the bed. You're too cute to be worrying about sheep heads, Gemini murmured with a small smile. Fourth froze. Don't call me that while I'm doing serious research. Gemini chuckled quietly, clearly enjoying himself. You're not helping, Fourth complained, flopping face down onto the blanket. His muffled voice followed. I just want a honeymoon that's not awkward. Somewhere peaceful, private, romantic. For a moment, Gemini watched him quietly. Then, setting aside his magazine, he leaned down beside Fourth. Then pick anywhere you like, he said softly. Because I promise, wherever we go, he paused, voice dropping to a teasing murmur, I won't want to leave our suite anyway. Fourth made a startled sound and sat up so fast he nearly fell off the bed. His face turned bright red as he grabbed the nearest pillow and threw it straight at Gemini. Gemini! Gemini caught the pillow midair, hiding a grin behind it. What? I was only being honest. You can't just say things like that. Fourth stammered, covering his face with his hands. We haven't even. You said you'd wait. I will, Gemini said simply, reaching over to pluck the notepad from Fourth's lap. But that doesn't mean I can't plan ahead. Plan what? Fourth asked suspiciously. Gemini looked down at the notes, then back up at him with a smirk. Let's just say I have a few ideas on how to make sure you rest properly during our honeymoon. Gemini! Another pillow went flying. This time, Gemini didn't bother catching it. He just laughed as it hit him square in the chest. You're impossible, Fourth muttered, his cheeks glowing pink. You married me, Gemini replied with a playful shrug. I was tricked, Fourth shot back. Gemini smirked. I didn't hear you complain when I kissed you against the fridge. Fourth peeked over his laptop screen, his face heating up all over again. That was, you can't use that as an excuse forever. It was a husband kiss, Gemini said simply. Unbelievable, Fourth muttered, grabbing yet another pillow. Okay, Gemini said quickly, raising both hands in surrender, laughter still in his voice. How about this? You choose 3 possible destinations and I'll handle the rest. Flights, hotels, food, and activities. Deal? Fourth blinked. You'd really plan everything? Of course, Gemini said. Organization is my specialty. Fourth eyed him suspiciously. You're not just going to pick the one with the biggest bed, right? Gemini smiled innocently. Is that a trick question? Gemini. He got hit with the pillow again. But despite all the chaos, teasing, and laughter, the air between them grew softer that night. Eventually, Fourth narrowed their options down to 3, Santorini, the Maldives, and a luxury resort in Ubud, Bali. Gemini approved all 3, properly this time, and watched as Fourth built a color-coded spreadsheet comparing spa options, breakfast menus, and ocean views. Gemini didn't interrupt again. Not with words, anyway. But every so often, Fourth would glance up and find Gemini watching him quietly, eyes warm, expression unreadable, like he couldn't decide whether to pull him close or just sit there and admire him. The truth was, Gemini had never felt like this before. Not in boardrooms. Not during conferences. Not even when he achieved all the success the world told him to chase. Nothing compared to this, sitting on a bed beside his clever, passionate, endlessly endearing husband, who talked about Greek villas and strawberry gelato as if it were the most important thing in the world. When Fourth yawned and stretched, hoodie lifting slightly, Gemini had to look away and take a deep breath. And when Fourth finally closed his laptop, curled up beside him, and rested his cheek on Gemini's shoulder, he whispered softly, I can't wait to go somewhere, just with you. Gemini smiled faintly and wrapped an arm around him, holding him a little closer. His husband. His world. And this honeymoon? Gemini Norwid had plans. Beautiful, secret, and possibly dangerous plans. Chapter 12. With just 2 days left before their flight to Bali, the entire apartment was buzzing with unspoken excitement. Only 48 hours stood between them and their long-awaited honeymoon, and the place had turned into a mix of chaos, laughter, and heartwarming domesticity. Fourth's semester break had officially begun, while Gemini, ever the responsible professor, had submitted his grades early and declared a short research break. Secretly translated, honeymoon with husband, do not disturb. Now it was just the 2 of them at home. Together. Alone. Married. And absolutely hopelessly in love. Gone was the cold, unreadable professor everyone on campus feared. At home, Gemini was someone else entirely. Don't pout at me while holding a knife, Gemini said one morning, eyeing Fourth, who was aggressively chopping cucumbers. You said I can't wear my floral shirt to Bali. Fourth protested, cheeks puffing adorably. It has pineapples doing yoga poses on it. It's artistic. Without missing a beat, Gemini leaned over the counter and pecked him on the lips. Fourth froze, blushing from ear to ear. We're cutting vegetables. Gemini smiled. You look too cute to ignore. Gemini. That had become their new normal. Kitchen teasing, morning hugs, late night cuddles, whispered words that made them both blush before bed. By the time packing day arrived, Fourth was a flustered mess, trying his best to focus while Gemini kept teasing him with casual affection. "Do we really need 26 shirts for a one-week trip?" Gemini asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're lucky I'm not packing 50, Fourth replied. "What if we do a beach brunch? Sunset dinner? Volcano hike? Couple spa day?" Gemini chuckled. "You're dangerously cute when you plan." Fourth beamed, color-coding his packing master list while darting around the apartment. He hadn't noticed Gemini lounging on the couch, watching him with quiet amusement. "Gemini," Fourth called out, towel wrapped around his head. "Do you own swim shorts that aren't black or scary?" "I own swim shorts," Gemini said. "They don't count if they look like you're attending a beach funeral." "I like black." "You can like black, but you're not wearing it on our honeymoon." Gemini laughed and stretched. "Fine. Let's go shopping. You're the boss." Fourth blinked in disbelief. "Wait, you're agreeing to come shopping?" Gemini leaned closer. "As long as you hold my hand." Fourth's face turned pink. What? Hand? Told me. 2 hours later, they were walking through one of Bangkok's most luxurious malls. Gemini wore a hoodie, cap, and mask, blending in like a mysterious celebrity. Fourth, meanwhile, looked radiant in a light blue sleeveless top and jeans, holding a bubble tea as he darted between racks. They looked like total opposites, but Gemini never once let go of Fourth's hand. Inside a boutique, Fourth was in his element. "I need something light for daytime. Maybe silk? Oh, matching couple outfits." Gemini nodded at everything, quietly amused. Then, something near the back caught his attention. A soft white silk shirt with lace sleeves and tiny shorts. It was elegant yet daring. He imagined Fourth wearing it under the Bali moonlight and immediately felt his heart race. Trying to stay calm, he quietly approached a store assistant and purchased it without Fourth noticing. "Gemini, where did you go?" Fourth called. Gemini returned with a neutral expression and a few bags. "Picked up some things for myself." "Oh good. You needed new clothes," Fourth said brightly. "One day I'll burn those black suits." Gemini chuckled. "I'd let you, if you help me choose replacements." As they headed to the cashier, a young store assistant smiled at Fourth. "Your boyfriend is really cute." Fourth grinned. "He's not my boyfriend. He's my husband." The assistant gasped. Gemini pulled down his mask slightly, smiling. "I'm very lucky." "Why are the good ones always taken?" the assistant muttered, walking away in defeat. Fourth blushed. Gemini leaned over and sipped from Fourth's bubble tea. "Hey. What? We're married." "Still. I was thirsty." "You're impossible. You married me." After browsing a few more stores, they stopped by a supermarket for travel essentials. Fourth filled their basket with sunscreen and toiletries, while Gemini lingered at the back of the aisle, looking suspiciously distracted. "Gemini," Fourth said, narrowing his eyes. "What are you up to?" "Just checking something." "Checking what?" "Supplies." Fourth tilted his head, confused, but before he could ask more, Gemini guided him away, hiding a mysterious grin under his mask. Later that evening, while unpacking their shopping bags, Fourth noticed a small white box tucked under Gemini's clothes. "What's this?" he asked curiously. Gemini smiled. "A surprise." "Should I be scared?" "No. You'll like it. Just keep it packed for now." When Gemini left the room, Fourth peeked. Inside was something silky and elegant. He blushed instantly and closed the box. His heart was pounding. His husband was clearly up to something. That night, as they curled under the blanket, Gemini rested his chin on Fourth's shoulder. 2 days, he whispered. Fourth smiled softly. "Yeah." Gemini's voice lowered. "Can I start the honeymoon early?" "Absolutely not." Gemini chuckled. "Fine. I'll wait." "You better," Fourth muttered, trying to hide his smile. Gemini's arms tightened around him. His words might have been teasing, but the warmth in his tone, The quiet affection in every glance said everything. Forth closed his eyes, heart full. Bali wasn't here yet, but somehow, it already felt like a dream had begun. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.